facilities have suffered attacks. Hundreds of thousands of people are without water or electricity. And with each passing hour, two things are increasingly clear. First, it keeps getting worse. Second, whatever the outcome, this war will have no winners, only losers. The United Nations and humanitarian partners are working to ensure safe passage from besieged areas and to provide aid where security permits. More than 600,000 people have received some form of aid. As millions of people in Ukraine face hunger and dwindling supplies of water and medicine, I'm announcing today that the United Nations will allocate a further $40 million from the Central Emergency Response Fund to ramp up vital assistance to reach the most vulnerable as we wait for the nations to come. This funding will help get critical supplies of food, water, medicines, and other life-saving aid into the country, as well as provide cash assistance to the needy. But the avenues in and out of encircled cities are more precarious by the day. And I underscore the crucial importance of respecting international humanitarian law. At least 1.9 million people are displaced inside the country, and growing numbers are escaping across borders. I'm deeply grateful for the solidarity of Ukraine's neighbors and other host countries who have taken in more than 2.8 million refugees in the past 2 weeks. The vast majority of those making the treacherous journey are women and children who are increasingly vulnerable. For predators and human traffickers, war is not a tragedy, it is an opportunity. And women and children are the targets. They need safety and support every step of the way. I will continue to highlight the desperate plight of the people of Ukraine as I am doing again today. Yet, there is another dimension of this conflict that gets obscured. This war goes far beyond Ukraine. It is also an assault on the world's most vulnerable people and countries. While war reigns over Ukraine, a sword of Damocles hangs over the global economy, especially in the developing world. Even before the conflict, developing countries were struggling to recover from the pandemic with record inflation, rising interest rates, and looming debt burdens. Their ability to respond has been erased by exponential increases in the cost of financing. Now, their breadbasket is being bombed. Russia and Ukraine represent more than half of the world's supply of sunflower oil and about 30% of the world's wheat. Ukraine alone provides more than half of the world's food program's wheat supply. Food, fuel, and fertilizer prices are skyrocketing. Supply chains are being disrupted, and the costs and delays of transportation of imported goods, when available, are at record levels. And all of this is hitting the poorest, the hardest, and planting the seeds for political instability and unrest around the globe. Grain prices have already exceeded those at the start of the Arab Spring and the food riots of 2007-2008. The FAO's Global Food Prices Index is at its highest level ever. 45 African and least developed countries import at least 1/3 of their wheat from Ukraine and Russia. 18 of those countries import at least 50%. This includes countries like Burkina Faso, Egypt, Democratic Republic of the Congo, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen. We must do everything possible to avert a hurricane of hunger and the meltdown of the global food system. In addition, we are seeing clear evidence of this war draining resources and attention from other trouble spots in desperate need. I renew my appeal for countries to find creative ways to finance increased humanitarian and development recovery needs worldwide, and to give generously and to immediately release pledged funds. My plea to leaders is to resist the temptation of increasing military budget at the expense of official development assistance and climate action. In a word, developing countries are getting pummeled. They face a cascade of crises beyond the Ukraine war. We cannot forget COVID and the impacts of climate change, in particular drought. Against the backdrop of these immense interconnected challenges, I'm announcing today the establishing of a global crisis response group on food, energy and finance in the UN Secretariat. I've also asked the Deputy Secretary General to lead an interagency steering committee with partners to oversee these efforts. And in the coming days, we will be consulting with member states willing to champion the actions needed to carry forward the global emergency response that will be required for this looming crisis. Make no mistake, everyday people, especially women and children, will bear the brunt of this unfolding tragedy. The war also shows how the global addiction to fossil fuels is placing energy security, climate action, and the entire global economy at the mercy of geopolitics. Finally, further escalation of the war, whether by accident or design, threatens all of humanity. Raising the alert of Russian nuclear forces is a bone-chilling development. The prospect of nuclear conflict, once unthinkable, is now back within the realm of possibility. The security and safety of nuclear facilities must also be preserved. It's time to stop the horror unleashed on the people of Ukraine and get on the path of diplomacy and peace. I've been in close contact with a number of countries, including China, France, Germany, India, Israel, and Turkey, on mediation efforts to bring an end to this war. The appeals for peace must be heard. This tragedy must stop. It's never too late for diplomacy and dialogue. We need an immediate cessation of hostilities and serious negotiations based on the principles of the UN Charter and international law. We need peace. Peace for the people of Ukraine. Peace for the world. We need peace now. Thank you.
Okay, we have time for a couple of questions. All right, first question, Margaret Boucher.
Thank you, Secretary General. Do you support Ukraine's calls for a no-fly zone?
That is a matter that, as you know, has been analyzed by a number of countries that considered that possibility as a risk of escalation that could create a global conflict. And it is based on that analysis that I think we need to be prudent, even if I understand the dramatic appeal of the Ukrainian government.
Alan Bulgati.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary General. Donetsk authorities reported today that Ukrainian side hit the heart of the city of Donetsk by missile .U, and the warhead of this missile was filled by the cluster munitions. I was following the Security Council, but I haven't heard anything about this. Is the UN aware of this incident?
I've seen the news about this incident, and I have to say that our position is very clear. Any attack on civilians or civilian infrastructure is regrettable if accidental and condemnable if done on purpose. But let's be clear, the overwhelming majority of civilian casualties and the overwhelming majority of civilian infrastructure destructed was done in the context of the war by the Russian forces.
One more.
Thank you, Secretary General. It's Pamela Falk from CBS News. You talk about mediation, but the talks have adjourned for the day. Is there anything you have done or will do, and have you reached out to Russia's President Putin? Thank you.
Yes, we are doing our best. I've talked with a number of leaders that are in permanent contact with President Putin, and of course we consider that it's absolutely essential for an additional effort, to make the Russian Federation understand that this war is becoming an absolute nightmare, and to create the conditions for the war to be stopped and for serious negotiations to be put in place. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Hopefully everybody knows.